And that's the reason I brought myself to the title of my message, A Father to the Fatherless. And if you understand how a child or how a young boy starts his life without a father image, without the actual gradual steps to tell him how to do this, how to do that, how to talk to someone properly, how to give, how to share, how to truly love, how to equip yourself with everything you need. When you don't have that as a young boy, then you attempt to survive or make do without. Or you do your best to kind of make everything fit when it really doesn't fit. So when you survive or you attempt to survive without fatherly support, then it makes it tough. It makes it hard. And this young boy grew up and he grew up with a lot of siblings. And but out of the siblings, he knew that there was something that he had to have or that he needed to be equipped with that he just wasn't given as a young child. And as he grew older, he had to learn to overcome. And when a young man or a young boy attempts to learn to overcome on his own, it's trouble. I mean, it's just trouble. You don't get to do the thing that you would have done. You don't get the discipline that you really needed to keep you in line, to keep you, tell you, well, don't take that out of that store. Don't put that in your pocket. Don't steal. Don't do things you shouldn't do. And what a father does is he keeps that son in line. He keeps them going in the right direction, the way he doesn't go off to the left or off to the right. And he doesn't stray too far away from the principles that his dad set forth. But either way, this young boy grows up to be a young man or a teenager. And in his teenage years, he gets an opportunity to play sports here, and he finds resolve in other men. People that may have not been the figure or the father figure he needed when he was growing up, but he had to gravitate to something. He had to go somewhere. So he gets his little bit of know-how for the things that he attempts to know-how from the men around him. Now, we don't know if these were godly men or what type of men they were, but he goes to pool halls, he hangs out at different places like the boys club and the YMCA, and he plays sports and does these other things. But through school, he doesn't have the guidance that he needs, that a father can give him, the discipline that he has to have. And I'm going to tell you, God disciplines us to a certain extent. He knows when we get way off track, he puts us back in line. But you have to have that even as an earthly man and living in this flesh suit, you got to have somebody, or this earth suit, you got to have somebody as a man to guide you, to show you where you need to go, how you need to go, what you need to do, how you need to do it. And you got to have somebody. You got to have somebody to guide you, to show you. And he just didn't have it. So he grows up and he becomes a young man and plays sports, and even endeavors to go to school, to college for a minute, and finds out that, well, that didn't work out. That's not going to work out. So he sees a commercial. The commercial says, see the world through the wonderful seas of the Navy. So he says, well, that sure looks good. He sees these different events and them traveling across to Italy and going to Spain and nice beaches and just everything. Just the enjoyable fact of traveling around the world. It sounds so wonderful. It's wonderful. Like dreaming a trip that you never could go on. So he goes off and he joins the Navy. But what he didn't know during that time is that the United States was in a conflict with another country. And what he didn't know that he was going to wind up going to war. So he goes to this war, and he stays in this situation, still kind of winging it. Because he didn't have that father to kind of rear him, but he's winging it now. He's a young man. He's winging it. And as he wings it, he goes in and makes his, make his mark in the Navy. He stays there for about 5 or 6 years and he gets out. And then all of a sudden, he's an older man. He's still a young man. A young man to me is, right now, a young man to me is 67 years old. But he's still a young man. He's in his early 20s, mid-20s, and he's out in the military. He's going out to set his mark as a man. And he's going out to set his mark without the actual rearing up and guidance of a father, a real father. But I'm going to get somewhere here pretty soon. Just give me a minute here. I'm going to lead you to the destination that we're all going to get to in a minute. And when I say a father to the fatherless, we have to understand what Scripture tells us. And we also have to understand that even as this young man goes out and he endeavors to be who he thinks he needs to be, and he thinks he has the confidence to do these things, he still doesn't have the structure of the father. So he's still winging it. And I think he was thinking that, well, if plan A fails, because he had some plans, but if plan A fails, well, I still got 25 letters left. Now I can still work on the other plans if this plan doesn't work out. So he moves forward and he starts dating, or he's been dating, and he's not doing the things that he really should do to treat women or a woman the way he should have been raised to treat a woman. So he fails in that category. He makes mistakes and he does things that gets him off track. And after it all said and done, and he makes his mistake in that area, he continues to live in that mode of mistakes, that mode of not having the structure, that mode of not knowing how to stay on the straight and narrow and not going off the left or the right. He still doesn't have the structure that he needed from a father. But one thing we find out about this young man is that somebody took time out to tell him about who his real father is. And even though his earthly father failed and he went away and didn't take care of the home and didn't do the things that he should have done, he still gets an opportunity for someone to tell him about who his real father is. His real father. Because when you know a father that will actually lay their son's life down for you, that's a real father. That's a father. Do we find it, or do I find it hard to do that for my sons? Not really. I think when I went off to war, I was laying my life down for a lot of people. But in essence, when you do that for your son, it's a entirely different meaning. You can do that for a nation, and fight for a nation, for the United States, but when you do that for your son or your daughter, as a father, that's when you got to count. That's when it really counts. So as this young man becomes an older man, he gets the opportunity for a couple of people to plant a seed. And they give him an opportunity to learn about who God is, who God really is. And one thing I want to go to is, real quick, I want to go to Philippians 1 verses 6. And I want you to read this with me and understand what's happening in this verse. Because this man was given an opportunity, this young man was given an opportunity to understand about who a real father is. And one thing about it is that when you find out and when you're confident of who your real father is, you can say these words, that I am confident of this. The one who began a good work in me will carry it on to to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. So when you get that seed planted in you, and it may not get watered right off the bat. It may not hit you till a later date. It may not hit you at the 20s where this man was. It may not hit him to the 30s. It may not hit him to the 40s. But when it hits, when that seed is watered, when that seed is developed, then guess what? That structure that you thought you had to have for the father that wasn't there, because you get a real father. You get 100% real, genuine father. A father that loves you so much that he tells you about his son Jesus. And how he was a father. And how he had to give up his son. And in Jesus' structure is where we as men get our structure. All right. So we can, don't think that I'm erasing the father, the earthly father. I'm not erasing him, because I was raised with a fatherless condition. But I'm not erasing my father, but I found out that even when you lack the things that you lack as a man, as a husbandman, a father, a grandfather, even those things that you lack or you miss, God has a way of fitting somebody else in that spot. Isn't that awesome? Amen. He can actually weave the strings and allow you to gain what you didn't have as a young man, and give you an earthly father to show you how you can have structure. So this young man that I'm speaking of is actually me. Mistakes being made, things happening that shouldn't have happened maybe. But all in all, God saw fit to give me an earthly father. Amen. And this earthly father, I won't mention his name even though I really want to. I want to keep it general. But this earthly father was a father-in-law. And he taught me things. He taught me things that I really didn't know. Things about like integrity, things about honesty, things like, hey, let's go out and go fishing. I never got to fish when I was a kid. I didn't know what fishing was about. And I got the chance to fish, I got a chance to bowl, I got a chance to play golf, I got a chance to travel with this man. And he became my earthly father. So I never called him what his name was, I just called him Dad. And he became my dad. My earthly dad. But one thing I did learn was that through him, I have the confidence of knowing that the seed was going to be fully watered. So he watered the seed and he developed and helped me become partially the man I am today. But he gave me something of himself in my wife. And I guess the rest of the watering came and the growth and development came from her. So, you know, even though my mom did a wonderful job, my mom could only be a mom. She couldn't be a dad. And she tried to discipline, and she did a pretty good job of that discipline. She didn't have no problem with she didn't have no problem with sparing the rod, pulling the child, and the child. We wasn't spoiled kids. So she could spare, she didn't have no problem with taking the rod and doing what she needed to do with it. She was very well trained in rod using. So we had no problem with that. But she couldn't be the man. She couldn't be she couldn't be the father. But she did a pretty good job. So when he gave me the earthly father and The earthly father gave me his daughter as my wife. Then I started actually really from that point learning and growing. You know, I thought I had been growing before, but I think I laid stagnant for such a long time that when I finally met my father-in-law and my wife-to-be, I got a chance to really learn what it was like to be a father, a husband, and a man of God. So even though we lose and we miss out on some things that our father may not have given us, or maybe he was absent, we're not going to hold him accountable for that. Because you have an opportunity not to blame or not to look back on blame from someone else when you have a God that loves you and can love you. He is the main Father. So we can't complain and talk about what we don't have, or what we can't get, or what we can't do, when we've got such a great God. A great God. Even when you got a father at home, sometimes he's not really at home. And even though I came from a home without a father, you can have fathers there that really aren't there. They're kind of like an invisible entity. They got work to do, they got bills to pay, and they don't prioritize the time that they need to develop the young man in their family or the young woman. Because actually, if you think about it, in this book here, all the men, Isaac, Abraham, all these men in the Bible, they gave the blessings to their sons. They laid hands on their sons to become who they were. And because the blessings come through the man, don't get me wrong, I'm not negating or doubting the women, because they're so important in our lives. But it has to come from the man. And as fathers today, we have to understand our role. Don't get outside your role, brothers, because basically we have a role to play that God expects us to do this. And he honors us when we do it. That's why when I prayed for the big man here, he set things in motion with his children, with his grandson. But at the same time, kids get a certain age, they're going to go in the direction they want to go. My son did it. Believe me, all three of my boys did it. As much as I started a good work in them, or I thought I did, they still strayed. For some reason, when you tell your sons, hey, I'm trying to get you so you don't go down that rocky road. And I want you to go on this smooth paved road. But it's like they go by them a 4-wheel drive and they gonna go down the rocky road anyway. And you can't do nothing about it, because basically they have to experience the wrongs in life. You don't want them to, but they do it anyway. So the main thing is, the point I'm trying to make is that all in all, even when father's at home, like the cat's in the crib, and you don't have time, you saw the man wave the boy on. Even when you don't have time, eventually, it'll come back sometimes to haunt you. And for that child, sometimes he will elevate himself in that situation. Or a son will bring himself into full measure as a man because he didn't have the structure. So all that's undetermined. You don't know. We can't predict. We can't say exactly what's going to happen to a fatherless man. But we can say that as long as you have the ultimate father, all right, you can't go wrong. You can't. He won't allow you to go wrong. All you have to do is think about what he did in reference to his son. And what his son had to do for us. And he did it out of love. Out of love. Amen. He loved us so much that he took stripes constantly. You know, and we've all heard this. He was unrecognizable because he had been beat so bad. But he did it for us. He took every sin, every mistake, every shortcoming, every fatherless son, every fatherless daughter on himself and became what we needed, everything that we needed. So on this Father's Day, even though this message isn't to get up and go, kick your feet, jump up and down and cut a flip, it's all about the main Father. And that's our Heavenly